Yo, I want to get straight into this Jonathan Majors shit. If you want to talk about it,
I don't think there's any relevant point in providing commentary on Jonathan Majors' situation as it currently stands. I've made it very clear on the podcast. I've 100% said that I'm tired of having the conversation. I've explained 100% why I'm
sure,
tired of having
yeah.
the conversations. I say that because I just remember the conversations around, say, Amber Heard and Johnny Depp, right?
Sure.
And then there were various points where people providing commentary on that situation were like, "Oh my God, Amber's right. Oh my God, Johnny's right." And then at
Yes.
each point in that saga, people put their foot in their mouths, like revealing their sexism, revealing their prejudices. Like there's not anything to truly add until all of the facts come out. And I think that the people usually rushing to try to provide commentary on it are coming from a place where they're like trying to say like, aha, can you believe the victim was lying? And now like, let's have a conversation about how these women are always lying on these men. And I just think that doesn't serve anybody well in the heat of the moment. Like, this, like, we could find out that everything that came out in these pieces was 100% fabrication or taken out of context, and it just doesn't make sense to have these conversations every time a new TMZ article drops.
It's a red flag.
People take nights off, like LeBron James isn't giving you 110%, 15 games into the season, because those first 15 games kind of don't fucking matter. Whereas like every game matters in American football season. So they're going to give you 100% every single week.
Well, very good. That was quite educational. I feel like I understand a little bit better. And on that note, welcome everybody to Waving the Red Flag, the number one dating and sports statistics podcast in the universe. It's your boy Eddie. It's AB. Josh is currently hawking our wares at a local podcast festival. He will be back next week. That's literally actually what he's doing. That's not even a joke. That's what's going on. Yo, I want to get straight into this Jonathan Majors shit. If you want to talk about it, I'm assuming you're relatively familiar.
Yeah.
But fair.
I don't think there's any relevant point in providing commentary on Jonathan Majors' situation as it currently stands.
Okay, that's fair. Are you willing to get into why you say that?
Yes.
Okay.
I say that
because I could see.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I can see where you're coming from.
I say that because I just remember the conversations around, say, Amber Heard and Johnny Depp, right?
Sure.
And then there were various points where people providing commentary on that situation were like, "Oh my God, Amber's right. Oh my God, Johnny's right. Oh my God, Amber's right. Oh my God, Johnny's right." And then at each point in that saga, right? At
People
each
flew
point,
off
at
and
each
stayed at
inflection
that
point.
level.
And and it was also like people put their foot in their mouths, like revealing their sexism, revealing their prejudices, revealing like their contempt for people who, in the very, very small chance, might actually be the victims of like libel or slander. I just think that in those situations, like there's not anything to truly add until all of the facts come out. And I think that the people usually rushing to try to provide commentary on it are coming from a place where they're like trying to say like, aha, can you believe the victim was lying? And now like, let's have a conversation about how these women are always lying on these men. And I just think that doesn't serve anybody well in the heat of the moment. Like, this, like, we could find out that everything that came out in these pieces was 100% fabrication or taken out of context, and it just doesn't make sense to have these conversations where people put their fucking foot in their mouths like every time a new TMZ article drops.
Man, I don't disagree, because I think that's because even in that in the initial conversation that we had like a couple weeks back, I was like a little bit hesitant to go, oh, I hope for something to be true, or that kind of thing. It's mostly just keep my mind open to whatever evidence comes forward. But I think my pushback there would be like, and maybe you wouldn't have in this situation, but early on we already commented on the way it didn't look good for Jonathan Majors. So it seems a little bit unreasonable to not speak on the way it looks different with new evidence. And as things come forward, commenting along the way, if not leading with a bad faith, wanting some particular thing to be true. I don't think it's entirely unreasonable to go like, well, here's what it kind of looks like here, but that's not conclusive. And then sort of going through time, wavering according to whatever the current evidence is. I don't think that's entirely irresponsible if it's not couched in never updating it based on new information that comes forward or trying to push forward a narrative that's been decided well before the evidence. In fact, I think it's probably necessary because otherwise you just leave the narrative at whatever the last like fixed point was, and that seems like it's not a good idea either.
Yeah, and it's also like I'll say, you know, in regards to what's been discussed on the podcast, I will say that I've made it very clear on the podcast that certain narratives in regards to how this plays out, I've 100% said that I'm tired of having the conversation. I've explained 100% why I'm
Sure,
tired of having the conversations. I say my piece on that, and I kind of just don't want to disrespect the vibe. So if we're in the middle of a conversation and somebody, you know, brings up Johnathon Majors, like, of course I'm going to talk about it. But if I'm being asked, like, would I like to talk about it? The answer is probably no.
That's understandable. Do you want to talk about another thing?
I will literally talk about anything else. I mean, I will talk about Johnathon Majors. It's just going to be like very like, you know, drunken armchair, you know, friend of feminism kind of shit.
Which that's good if you want to, but you don't have to. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
Okay, here we go. All right, my girlfriend is inheriting a bunch of money and wants to spend it on herself. Dear Pay Dirt, my long-term girlfriend and I disagree about whether a $30,000 inheritance left to her by her great aunt should be her money or our money. She wants to spend a large amount, almost a third of it, on expensive supplies for her hobby. I think that we should save most of it and use some of it on a vacation since we both find traveling extremely romantic. My argument is I don't care about her hobby, but we'll both enjoy a trip abroad. 2, we've lived on only my, admittedly low since it's academia, income for over a decade. So according to her own rule about entitlement to her windfall, shouldn't she technically have been entitled to none of my wages all these years? Her argument is she had to put aside her hobby for many years to raise our children. It's not a safe art form for young kids to be around and yearns to return to it. 2, she paid entirely in cash for our $950,000 house at the beginning of our partnership, though my income pays the property taxes and maintenance costs. Therefore, she alleges that we haven't actually been living on solely my income because I've been saving on rent all these years. I feel resentful of the double standard about control over finances and hurt that she would rather prioritize her own joy over our shared joy. She feels impatient to reconnect with her hobby and hurt that her contributions to our lifestyle are unseen. How do we reconcile our different viewpoints? How should the money be allocated? Is there something that we're missing? Done. What's up?
So one, in the current context, so I will say I am team keep finances separate. That doesn't help.
Entirely?
That doesn't help. No. When I say keep finances separate, it means like, so let me backtrack. So I'll explain like my ideal money situation. Like if I were married, right? I would say that we have separate accounts. We have a single joint account that we both put our portion of the money that we spend to live proportional to our incomes, because it doesn't necessarily have to be half and half. Like if I make way more money than my spouse, it doesn't make sense for her to pay half of our living expenses. It wouldn't be equitable, or vice versa. So we have one account that we put in stuff, or if like we want to save for a vacation, we have a fund that we put in for vacation savings on a predetermined, a priori established amount for all of that stuff. Other than that, you do what you do with your money. I do what I do with my money. If what you want to do with your money benefits both of us, phenomenal. If what you want to do is a hobby that I have absolutely no interest in and get no joy from other than the fact that I want you to be happy, then please spend all your money on that situation. But saying that somebody's obligated to get like, let's take inheritance out of this. Let's say it was a work bonus. I think it's a little bit ridiculous to say that somebody's not within their power to just spend it on whatever they want to do as long as our bills are paid and all that kind of stuff. I think he played himself in the beginning by not having that established. But in the schema that he is designed for their relationship, I still think she's of no obligation to give him anything of enjoyment for that money. She should spend it however she wants to. And like mathematically, like even if you want to play this kind of tit for tat game, mathematically, she has 100% contributed more to that relationship financially than he has. Then you also bring into the aspect of kids, right? I'm assuming, like based on the way that was worded, that she's not working as a part of childcare. Like, man, she's saving you childcare. Like, she had your kids. Like, she's taking care of them probably at great expense to her career and how she wants to live in general outside of that. Like, that $30K is hers, bro. Like, she should spend that shit however she wants to. It would be great if, like, you guys could also go to fucking Bali or whatever on that money. I get it, but no obligation on her part is how I feel.
I think saying if y'all have combined finances, because like the idea of like separate finances entirely, and I don't know exactly where the line is that you draw, it's like that doesn't become realistic. If one of y'all is making all of the income, you're not going to have separate finances. That's just
I've definitely done it. I've definitely done it, and I've done it for a span of years where like I was making like a grown man like working salary.
Okay.
And my girl was living off of her like refund check from like financial aid, and like we split finances. And like again, we did it proportionally. Like it was
okay.
Rent was down the middle, and I handled every bill that was already like sunk costs. For example, like I did an analysis like in the beginning
that you were
like,
already paying for anyway.
I was already paying for it. I was like, her presence there didn't increase the electricity. It didn't increase the water by any like meaningful amount. And I was like, cool, I pay the electricity, I pay the water, I pay the internet, which is like doesn't increase based on how much use we had in that current state anyway. So like you can 100% do it. Like it's not that hard. I don't know why people think it is.
Because the situation that you're describing, first of all, her income wasn't zero. So that's already completely different than this situation. And two, y'all were, I'm assuming, 20-somethings. That's a whole different scenario than buying a house, having a baby together, like making like larger life plans. There's not as many of those like sunk cost opportunities where it's like, oh, she's just moving into your house. So she just has to make sure she doesn't starve to death, and she can live off of what you already had. That's a totally different situation than a married couple who's like doing family planning.
I mean, I think kids is probably the only valid complication, but like during that like years span, like we moved, we bought furniture, like we lived like a very full like quasi like what people would think of as a married life to do that. And it was very it's very easy to like split finances, like very easy.
So how did you do a couch? She paid 10% of it, you paid 90% of it, or how did that work?
Again, we split the cost of all that stuff proportionally to our income. It was like you put in like a shopping cart at fucking Rooms to Go or whatever, and you say you make this amount, we both use this, split it, boom. It's not that difficult. Groceries, right?
Okay.
Was like same situation. It was very easy. That shit takes like 2 minutes. I do understand why people don't do it, because like if you're on the fly, you kind of don't want to think about it. You'd rather just like do it and whatever. But having separate finances is not that hard.
I mean, because also I don't know whether or not people would actually consider that to be really much different than you being the primary breadwinner. Like if you say, okay, it's proportionate to your income is zero, saying, I can see it going either way, but saying, oh, we're both financially contributing, we are splitting costs, and I'm paying 100% of the bills and you're paying zero because that's your share, I think most people would look at that and go, well, no, you're not. You're not really splitting finances if you're prorating it like once the prorate becomes like really, really extreme, you're no longer splitting finances.
I think that you're splitting finances. It's just like one person has different context for their finances. But I will say, bringing it back to the conversation, I think that that's why this particular thing goes in favor of the wife and not the I'm assuming husband in the situation. I don't want to jump to that conclusion. I don't know if
that's a good point. It doesn't. Yeah, but I would say husband.
yeah. We'll just go with that one. The spouse posting.
Yeah.
Because if you look at it, right, a $950,000 house bought decades ago, that shit's built up fucking equity.
Oh.
That shit's probably earned them $1 million.
No,
then you look at the fact that, like, she's right. She bought that cash, which means that the mortgage on a $950,000 house, I don't know if anybody's doing that math in their head. That's probably $4,500, $5,000 a month, 30 years stretched out, right? She's saving that motherfucker all kinds of money. She has earned that 30K.
And they've only been together for
earned that 30K.
Because they've been living off of his thing for a decade. Over a decade, I don't think he's paid that debt down.
He has not
even
fucking
close.
paid that off. And again, I think, and I know we've had this conversation in passing a little bit, like ascribing like a dollar figure to like childcare. Childcare on average costs more than the average college education in the United States. And for our international viewers, I just want you guys to know that higher education costs in the United States is out of fucking control. It is a complete market failure. It goes up, 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 up. So it is in a very bad place, like versus like wages in the States. So she's covering childcare, a huge expense. She's covering this motherfucker's mortgage, which has gained equity over the past 10 years, most definitely. She's earned that 30K. Like, again, like take me to Bali and I love that shit. If not, man, whatever your hobby is, like take all of it. Do what you got to do.
Look, the main I agree off the house because the financial ledger is very clear. He still owes her money, like not the other way around. So if she were to spend $20K of that would just be $20K more debt that he is into her. But and so I think that invalidates his like decade argument. I don't think he gets to say, hey, we've been living on that, therefore you owe me money. That's like a ledger argument. But I think there's an argument here which is less about like, it's less of a financial, like you owe me this tit for tat kind of thing and going like, here's an opportunity that we as a couple have. What are we going to do with it? Fuck the previous money spent or like as a business thing, like who owes what money to who. It's like we right now have an opportunity in front of us. You put down $1 million for the house that we live in. So we live in that house. We decided to have kids together. So I financed that. Boom. We have combined finances. The ledger is at zero at all times. We're just at any given point, we're doing what's like we think helps one another and us together as a family union. Now, as a family unit, we've received $30,000. The things that have happened previously are marginally irrelevant. I think it's pretty reasonable in that situation to go, yeah, if I win $30,000, like I probably am going to contribute some amount of that to my family in some way. But I also think as a partner, you would go, the person that I love has not been able to pursue a part of their life for a long time. And now there's an opportunity in front of them that allows them to do so. That would be pretty high
without hurting us. Without hurting us. Because again,
it puts where it's
just money it's just money in the bank. It's just money in the bank.
We're already doing good. It'd be different if we had to sacrifice something for her to spend that $30,000, or she was taking it from the finances we already had established. But the thing that sticks out to me is that he says, one, I don't care about her hobby. Like, I understand maybe that could be taken generously to just mean it doesn't directly benefit me because it's only for her. Fine. But to go like, so you don't give a fuck about your wife pursuing her passion that she's not gotten to pursue in a decade, like that doesn't bring you any joy? That doesn't bring you any hope for the future? Like, that's wild to me.
Yeah. I will say first and foremost that, and I know we had a whole conversation about psychology and like social science not having really good correlation coefficients in their models. But the models say that one of the best indicators of a long-term successful relationship is you being able to be happy for your spouse's interests, right? So it's like exactly. So it's like if somebody has something in their life and it makes them like giddy and you don't support that, that's a huge indicator that you guys aren't going to make it based on, the social science research, meta-analysis. And I would say that like overall, everything you said, I agree with. The only reason why I didn't take that stance is because the poster very much made it a ledger that did take into consideration past stuff.
Yes.
Like they very much like made it like a tit for tat game. And I think I kind of gave my answer in the context of that. But outside of that context, if I'm looking at this situation, clean slate, just in a vacuum, like a couple got some money. How do I think it should be spent? I think you're right. I think they need to take into consideration like what's best for the family and everything that means, you know, because what's best for the family is a very complicated answer in and of itself in a lot of contexts. But OP gave a ledger, man. OP started like rattling off shit, and I'm like, if you're gonna rattle off shit, I'm gonna call out how you've lost this. Like the ledger is in her favor.
Yeah, true. And the reason that I want to give some leniency there is because I think it's like it can be hard to articulate like why you think you're entitled to $30,000 that legally is not yours. So I think you start going into that ledger and you start going, well, you know, here's what I've contributed to the relationship, and you put it in financial terms because it's a financial conversation. But really what you're maybe trying to get at is we are a family unit. And that's what you're trying to express that through like dollars. But maybe what's being gotten at is just like, we have lived a life such that our money is our money. She didn't make a financial decision by herself. She bought a house for us. I didn't make a financial decision just for myself. I give my money to our household. So now this would be a break from that. So I think there's a little bit of leeway, but you're right. He did make it very, you know, like, oh, she owes me. And it's like, no, bro, you're still like several $100,000 in debt to her. Because I don't know how the fuck she afforded $1 million down. Like, that's crazy.
You're probably 20 years away from paying her back financially, champ. Like,
yeah.
I don't think people fully contextualize.
$950,000 is crazy.
$950,000.
The other thing is like something about the story.
$30,000. Like, I'm just gonna be honest with you. I've had $30,000 in my hand. That shit ain't nothing. Having $950,000 in your hand is crazy.
Entirely in cash. That almost is crazy, this don't even make sense. Man. That actually low key like does not make sense. Like, what the fuck is going on here? Like, who is she that she had $1 million in cash, but past that has no finances at all, and so became a housewife, but then got an inheritance of like, is she a mobster? Like, this seems like she's a criminal. Like, does that set of things make sense to you? A person has $1 million in cash, then they stop to be a house spouse, and then win $30,000 from an inheritance like that.
I can think of some very niche situations where it will make sense.
Can you say?
Very niche. So I'll be honest, you know, one of like the gold standards of like how you make money is you headhunt like startups that are getting ready to IPO, right? So they pay you a shit salary. You know, like you're working like a dog, and you make like fucking, you know, $50K or whatever for, you know, 100 hours a week or whatever. But they give you all of this. Yeah, you get all this fucking equity, and then they IPO, and you're a millionaire overnight. That's how you get all these like Silicon Valley bros, like that are just like 25 and driving like a Lamborghini and all that kind of shit. That's what happens. So they were making nothing base. They got these options, and then they got a lump sum of money, you know, based on, you know, their stock options after the IPO. So it could be one of those situations. It could be one of these like high power like attorney situations where, you know, they were using their base to kind of like live on and like pay like debt down, and then they were like maybe stacking their bonuses. So they quit their job, so they no longer got their base, but they got their bonus money stashed over like, you know, 10, 12 years, easily $1 million. So I could think of some niche situations where it would make sense. Real world. Okay.
No, see, that makes sense. And they've had a clear, like, they knew that was going to be the situation beforehand. And this is they have a bunch of money, but maybe after that, no income. So they just got a shit ton of maybe she was in tech or some shit like that. And that happened. Cause I'm looking at this story crazy. Like, what the fuck is this situation?
Bro, I've been saying for like forever, man. It's like companies that like, you know, I ain't gonna call no names out because I don't want to big them up, you know, no free clout. But it's companies that I'm like, man, on the love of God, please call me back. Please call me back, because you're gonna IPO. Like, you run the game. Please call me. You're gonna IPO, and everybody that works for you is gonna be a millionaire.
Like, but the initial salary package is low key trash.
Yeah.
Okay, but you would make that calculation and go like, yeah, I'm down to fuck it. I'll work for for peanuts, knowing that y'all are gonna IPO, and I'm gonna be like, boom, ready to go.
Yep.
Damn, that sounds good. Well, yeah, homeboy. Okay, my final words on this is, I think that it is reasonable to expect her to contribute at least something to the household in the way of like vacation savings, but she only wants to spend a third of it. She only wants to spend $10K on her hobby. Like, fucking go for it. I do think it's a little bit suspicious that he hasn't clarified what this hobby is, and I'm like, is she an OnlyFans person, or she wants to do like erotica or something? Like, what's the fact that he didn't mention specifically what the hobby was and that it's not safe for kids to be around, I'm like, I mean, it could be, sculpting or plaster molding or some shit. Like it's probably an art. So I get it, but her spending $10K on it, that's actually such a reasonable concession. She said that she's going to give you 2/3 of the shit and you expect more. Get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
Regardless of all that other argument. So let's see. I'm very curious about this one with you, actually. So there was the Ask the Internet. They did like, would you want to be like 8 to 18 or 18 to 28? And I'm very curious what you think, because I feel like you'll have a strong opinion on this, just on all of the shit that you've talked about with like the nature of your life.
25 to 30 was fucking lit, man. 25 to 30 was amazing. But
that was the best one. Okay.
Yeah, I wouldn't go 8 to 8. I wouldn't go back to that shit for nothing. Like I get why people say that, and like and to your point, Eddie, like I've talked about how my childhood was on here like pretty extensively. Like my childhood was not great. It was very fucking horrible. And I've also been very open about the fact that as bad as my childhood was, my sisters had it
way worse.
3-4 times as worse. You know what I mean? Like their shit is, if boy, like their shit was bad. But what's interesting about that is, like, I know me and my sisters have had that conversation, and they always say like they wish they could go back, and I've never dug a little bit deeper into that. I kind of just talked about like why I wouldn't. So my big thing is, I felt when, during that 8 to 18 phase, that I was playing from behind and always like constantly being dug into a hole based on my mother's decisions and my mother's poor judgment. I felt like I couldn't get out from under her poor decisions. And I think once I got to a point where like I was free of the baggage that came with like her bullshit, that's when my life started. Like that's when I could finally start like doing shit kind of my way and kind of figuring shit out. And I kind of felt like, I say past probably like 19 is probably when I knew if something was going wrong in my life, it wasn't based on like my childhood circumstance. It was societal structure, or it was my own individual like bad decision making. And that kind of was freeing for me, and it made me feel a lot better about everything that I was going through, even during that point, because life wasn't exactly a crystal stair when I was 19 either. But like, I wouldn't go back to my childhood for shit, man, because it was just a lot of shit being imposed upon you, a lot of consequences like that you had to deal with, and you had very little autonomy to change those circumstances as like an 8-year-old. Like, you just couldn't do that shit. As a 19-year-old, within the framework of like, structural issues, you have some autonomy. And granted, most people, myself included, will say also not really a ton, but you have some. And I found solace in that. I will say again that fucking 20 to 30 was like great. Like I was making decent money. I was happy in my relationships. I was near my family, which is when I'm happiest. During that time frame, I went and got my MBA, which was a transformative and I think an amazing experience. I met great people, had a great time overall. So if I could go back to any time period, and I'm not that far removed from that. I know, I'm not going to tell you how old I am, but not that far removed from that period. But 8 to 18, never.
18 to 28 or
18 to 28. 30. 18 to 28, definitely much more high points in that frame. Definitely the sweet spot, 25, 30, chef's kiss.
No, I mean, I think I tend to agree. I mean, and everything that you were saying, I think is what, I mean, yeah, I think it's a little bit surprising when people say otherwise, when people say like adulthood is hard, and, maybe there are elements of privilege there and things like that, but, or maybe the opposite, because it feels like what you're talking about, I feel like is replicated at every level of like the level of autonomy just skyrockets. And then when you're in that like 25 to 35 range, it's like, not only do you have the autonomy, but you've managed to figure out how to wield
resources.
And yes, so you have resources. Yeah. Even
if that's just mental, like mental resources, like you said, like learning how to navigate, like was huge, Cause like, even when I got my little bits of money, like here and there, between like 19 to like 23, like I was squandering that shit. Like I didn't know what to do with it. Like knowing how to get. Yeah. I would tell you that story about when I was 19. I got my fucking refund check.
No, would you? Or maybe, but what happened?
So I got my refund check. I'm 19. I'm a college student. I got $3,000 in my hand. And I worked during high school and had my little side hustle. So I had my little money in bits and pieces. This is probably the first time I had a lump sum of $3,000 in my hand at one time. I bought my the floor of my college dorm pizza. On that dorm floor was the kid of the Burger King CEO. So my broke ass on my Pell Grant refund check money with my mom who is is a cashier, my dad who was a forklift driver. I bought the Burger King Burger King CEO at the time. I don't know if he's still the CEO.
I'll treat
his
you.
Kid,
you know what I mean?
CEO,
it's on me.
Pizza, his own pizza. Let me just help you out, bro. I'm balling right now.
You just college
We're all
education.
in this together.
College essay adversity poster child. You just splurging on millionaires babies, on heiresses and shit. That's wild. How much did you burn through of that? Because a floor of pizza seems like several hundreds of dollars.
Man, it was Domino's, 555 deals and all that kind of shit. It was probably $300. It was probably
okay. That's not honestly, that to me actually doesn't seem like a dumb decision to me.
Yeah.
Because I feel, and you know much more about money, and I'm when I'm thinking about that, teens, early 20s, I was sections where I was damn near close to homeless, but in a very privileged way. But I was, and you knew me in that, I'm right there. But spending a tenth of what you have to connect with others, I think is depending on the context, actually a very reasonable and sound financial decision under certain circumstances, I think.
Yeah. I don't disagree, man. I don't, and there were definitely dumber things I did with that money than that, to be fair. I basically set fire to that money.
Yeah, fair.
But it's I think the weird thing to me, I wouldn't say weird. I say something that I honestly maybe just need to dig into a little bit better, is that, like I said, my sister's way worse than me. And I will say that I definitely benefited from having them. I am who I am despite the circumstances because they did an outsized amount of child rearing versus their station. My mother was not there. My big sis stepped up. My dad wasn't there during my early childhood, didn't come in until I was 14, 15. And has been, a rock even into my adulthood past that point. He earned his spot. But talking to them in a situation where they didn't have older siblings to help them out. They didn't have, their parents
they
weren't
want to go
there.
back.
And they're yeah, man, I really wish I could go back to my childhood. Shit was so much simpler. And I was like, that's interesting.
Simpler. Okay, because the one way I was, and I'm guessing, but I was thinking, maybe it's because they had to pick up such a heavy load so early, they were kind of blossoming into that feeling of autonomy earlier, and maybe that's what. But then you said simpler. That doesn't, because something in adding to your point, for me, the allure of childhood is a time where you're held, you're lifted up, you're safe. You don't have to think about things because someone else has it handled, right? It's summarized. It's you fall asleep in the car and you wake up in bed because somebody else has everything handled. They make sure that you get to and from work so that you can kind of submit into that being cared for role. But it means that you're almost entirely at the mercy of another person. And so if that other person isn't doing well, then it's fuck this. I'm just being driven anywhere by a fucking madman. This is horrible. And in that situation, I feel like when you're a young person and you're 20, 22, 23, and you're just struggling, and it's ramen noodles and it's figuring out a job and it's figuring out, wait, how do you get an electricity? How do you pay electricity for a house? How does that happen? Should I travel? Fuck, I just got $1,500. Should I spend that on a plane ticket or what? The struggle of that and how much fucking up happens and how much struggle happens if you've got certain levels of privilege to where you don't end up completely destitute is much preferred. Struggling under my own weight versus being comfortable under the control of another person. I would rather struggle. So I could see being like, okay, yeah, I'm 19 and I'm basically having to raise my brother, but low key, I'm kind of like steering the ship a bit. Could have an appeal, but it doesn't sound like that's what they're saying though.
Yeah,
But that's just what popped up to me.
and again, this conversation has really sparked, me wanting to have that conversation a little bit deeper. But I do think that also on some level, I think maybe it's, and this was my initial thought to myself, not having a conversation with them, was maybe they mean like, I wish I had a real childhood, because they really didn't, they were thrust into a situation where they were grown like very early on.
16, 17.
I would say earlier, man. Like,
Jesus.
I'm not gonna get into it. Some of the shit that I done heard, man, and like how they had to like make it through. Like, it's some real shit going on.
Can you give any just like a single point of data to contextualize what kind of level of?
Oh man, like
It's fine if not, but just yeah.
oh man. Okay, so I think I can give maybe a funnier one. It was a situation where like, so my mom is a world-class flim flammer. So at one point,
What's flim flam mean?
Like she's a grifter is a more
okay, bullshit artist
term. Yeah. So like at one point she was actually no, okay. Yeah. Actually, I can't say that one. Never mind.
Okay, so I'll bleep what you just said and then finna get the whole family fucked up.
Yeah, I'm finna
family reunion. Half the family go keep going.
Yeah, people's going to jail on that one. I was like, oh shit. Okay, let me keep anyway.
Okay. Technical difficulties.
So I will say I can't think of anything that that's not like purely family business, but like
Sure.
I will say that they had to grow up very fast out of necessity based on their circumstances. Where we grew up, how we grew up, that kind of thing. So I do think that on some level, maybe going back to a childhood where it's more like what you described does have an appeal. And I do think that it would have changed stuff, like I remember I wrote a letter to my mother, this was maybe like a year and a half ago. I never sent it to her, out of courtesy, as I tell her all the time. To her, like as I tell her all the time, me not talking to her is an act of kindness. She doesn't want to hear what I have to say.
Yo, that's real shit. Like, if you don't want to talk to me because the conversation we would have to have, you would not enjoy a second of it. So
yeah, you would not walk out of this unscathed. So I didn't send it to her, but I basically in that situation, and my mother will never hear this, so feel free to keep it in. But it was very much like, imagine what we could have been if like you had been a real mother, So I think about that all the time in context of my sisters. Like my sisters are hardworking. They're brilliant. My oldest sister is the most naturally intelligent person that I know. So I think about, what their childhood could have been like had their talents and their intelligence been nurtured and built up. So I think on some level, they also think about that. But I also don't necessarily think that that's what most people are thinking about when they say, I want to go back to my childhood. I think they're thinking about it more along the lines of what you're saying. And I think it's because that's more along the lines of how they viewed their childhood.
So you figure your sisters, when saying this, and yeah, I think that does seem like a worthwhile conversation to have in what they meant there. You think they're saying, I wish I could revisit it in order to redo it, essentially. Is that what? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Because I had the opportunity to be a child if I had a real parent available to me.
Yeah, I think, and I'm purely speculating. I'm purely speculating. I don't necessarily think they're saying I want to redo my childhood, because that's how I always interpret those conversations. I think they said like, I would like a do over. Yeah. Yeah, that's. I want to. Yeah. I don't want to repeat. I'd rather redo.
Yes. Live it differently, live it with, safety nets that allow, because there's shit that you could, at 15, there's a version of life that can only be lived at 15, no matter what your circumstances are. You can't redo that at 30. You can never, at 35, you can never really be cared for, coddled for, safe, to release yourself into the care of another person. That really never comes back again. So to go back and have the opportunity to do that under fully supported circumstances, I probably would be incredible. To be like, yeah, I wish I got to have a childhood because I know what it's like to be grown. So that if that is what they mean, that makes a lot of sense to me. But yeah, but I would say even having lived like there's trauma, I'm not gonna lie, but it ain't like your shit for the most. There's some elements that I won't get into that are, yeah.
You've said some shit that like make me, like say that I didn't like dive into, but
sure.
so I definitely get it. Yeah.
So like with those things in mind, as well as some shit that I am not gonna get into, I still think I probably had a better, more even keel, like stable situation than yourself, and I wouldn't redo that. I would definitely redo like the like teens, 20s, like that would, because I feel like that. I mean, the worst times were amazing, bro. The worst times, like
you're right, man. Like I remember like my summer after freshman year. And you know what? I'm gonna call some of those guys because they're like guys that I was hanging out with at that point.
Yeah, we go
I haven't
connections
spoken to in years. But like that was the most amazing, like brokest, like we're struggling, but we're all in this shit together kind of thing. Like I remember at one point
this old head conversation right now, and I love it.
Like,
go
for the Atlanta people that are listening. Like we were going to like Metro Lanes and games on like those Wednesday. Like $5 bowl days, and we were trying to figure out who was going to be able to afford the $5 bowling. Like we were like oh shit, man, who's got the fucking money for the bowling?
Yeah.
And somebody would be like, okay, man, I got it this week. And then we were figuring out how to eat together, like whose cars we were borrowing. I remember at one point we went to the club in my homeboy's mom's minivan. Like it was like some insane shit that just happened. I was living off of a credit card that had like $1,000 limit and shit. Like it was like just some amazing broke. Like we're all in this together, like togetherness kind of time. Some of those guys I haven't spoken to in years.
You should, if it seems like there's something still left there. But yeah, because there's so much there's so much connection that I think. I mean, though I feel like maybe I lean too heavy on how much of the appeal of childhood is being cared for. 8 to 18, it was some friendships, bro. It was some friendships in there that went hard. I'm not gonna lie. You can't
have friendships like that no more. I just can't have that anymore. You know what I mean? I'm very grateful. I'm very grateful. And I say this all the time, that I have connections that have endured the test of time. Like I still regularly talk to people that I went to elementary school with. Like I have a group chat with like high school friends that like I've known for years. Like my Twitter feed, and I talked about this on Twitter not that long ago. I don't know if you saw it, Eddie, but my Twitter feed is full of people that have known me at this point like 15 years.
That's beautiful, though.
So I've been able to keep a lot of connections at every stage of my life. Elementary school, middle school, high school, undergrad. Not my first in grad school. I don't remember none of those motherfuckers, but definitely my MBA program. I've been able to keep in touch with a lot of people. So I'm thankful for that. But I will say that a special time in my life was that 18 to 23. Like those friendships are something else, man. Like it's built on a different kind of foundation, man.
Yeah. Because there's an adversity. I mean, so you said you can't have, because I'm like, you said you can't have those kinds of friendships. Is that a bit of an exaggeration?
That was in the middle of a conversation, so a bit of hyperbole there. But I definitely think it's.
But I thought it might have been. Yeah. Okay. Because I mean, you might not have been. Because I'm thinking about it. I'm like, if you're 34 or whatever, and you're trying to build a new friendship, it's like y'all both got kids, you both have decent jobs, you both have life plans for the next 5 years. You got a partner, you got a house, whatever, or maybe you don't. But it's like you're not two 35-year-old niggas, drunk in the street at 2 a.m. It's a different type of energy. That's not.
It's different.
So I could,
But I will say that like I often said that like so between undergrad and like going back to get my MBA, I don't think I made a new friend. Like all of my friends like between that point were like undergrad and like high school and before that I just hung on to, and I was very fulfilled with that. Like I love my friends. And I met a lot of people going to get my MBA that I consider, that I'm going to try to, keep in my life. I consider them lifelong friendships. I will say that I didn't know if I could make like friends like out in the wild, like all that kind of situations. But like some of the people that I've met at my current work are these are going to be like around people. Like I love these people. You know what I mean? Like we're friends. So I do think that we kind of have as relatively young people, like we're definitely not 18, but we're not 50. So I think that maybe like we still have a little bit of life to live and experiences to cultivate, and like to see how we can still make friends in those kind of capacities, because I've met friends in ways that I didn't think that I could ever make friends.
I think people
I think that's been
drastically
shocking.
underestimate it, because I've made like, and actually low key, I would say actually the friendships that I've made later in life have been deeper and stronger than some of than the young fun, drunk out at night trying to figure out the pizza thing. That there's a bond there, but I think the friendships that I've made where it's like, yo, this dude, helped me pay off a hospital bill, or like, yo, this is the person that's picking me up from the airport. It's like there's a different level, because I am an adult, so the friendships there was kids doing kid shit. But it's like the person where I'm like, yo, who's my emergency contact? Who's the person where I'm like, yo, I'm in a situation right now and I need a couch to sleep on, or like, yo, I don't know what to do with my like job or career, or like, yo, man, I'm like deeply fucking depressed about the nature of my life. Those are grown folks issues, and those friendships that are where you've made it in your late 20s or your 30s or your 40s or whatever. There's a different texture to that I think low key, I think we underestimate how transformative and how divine and sort of sacred those relationships that are formed then can kind of be. Because there's this whole, nobody makes friends after university thing or after college thing. And it's like, I mean, I don't think that's not untrue. But there's some opportunity that's deeply slept on. Because you can have some, I just think about movies, man. Like, everybody that's having an adventure in the movies is they 30, 40, 50. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And they go, hey, look, we should rob a bank or whatever the fuck, and you start, or whatever the fuck it is.
The weirdest fucking adventure that you could come up with. I thought you was going to be on some eat, pray, love type shit. And you talking about some, okay, let's fucking rob a bank. Like,
I think Eat, Pray, I haven't actually seen that movie. I think Eat, Pray, Love is corny. I've never seen that, so I don't really know what's there. But I think it's like, that's like adventure for adventure's sake. Like, that's like funny people, like, let's make one last hoorah, as opposed where it's like, fuck, y'all aren't even old enough to be making one last hoorah. It's like, no, we are actively living life because we want to do something in the world. So maybe it's not rob a bank, but I think that captures the idea of what I was getting at. Maybe it's, let's start a business, or like, man, let's we both realize that we're from the same, tribe in Africa. Let's go travel together and find a fucking relative. So cool. Mm-hmm. Me and 3 homeboys, we all end up in West Africa trying to find whatever, but that kind of thing where it's like, let's attempt to do something. I think has some deep, meaningful impacts that people, pretend like there's not a narrative for, but there is. So, continue to be excited about what the fuck is coming up next. Look, also, you started fucking way earlier than me and had consistent, 8 to 18, I wasn't doing nothing, really. 18 up? That was just it felt, so much of that discovery just feels like a movie. Like, oh my God, I'm having sex. I'm paying bills. I'm going to a restaurant and paying for the food. I'm actually low-key, for real, living. I don't know how wild, but that, for me, going from transitioning from like somebody's child to a participant in society was fucking, oh my God.
And I will say, during like 25 up, right, like going to get an MBA,
right,
felt like some movie shit,
some TV points, shit.
Right? So it was like, I'm going to grad school.
What the?
They're fucking flying me out first class so I can come and like interview and all that kind of shit. Like I'm meeting with the CTO tomorrow, personally, just to discuss what this opportunity means for me and that kind of shit. And like, like meeting with boosters and like corporate recruiters and like that whole like kind of thing. It felt very, conferences, on somebody else's dime. It felt very movie like at points.
Right.
I will say that I didn't go to like Harvard or some shit. So I imagine if I had went to Harvard, it would have felt more like a movie consistently. Yeah. So, but like at the level that I was at, like it definitely felt like I was like, I remember at one point, like I was walking back to a hotel that I didn't fucking pay for, in a phenomenal suite, just thinking about that shit. And I was like, fuck, man, is this a fucking episode of Suits? Like, you know what I mean? That's the kind of shit,
This is
that
shit
happened.
from movies.
Yeah.
And
I relate to that quote specifically.
Now, we've obviously lived two very different types of movies, because my situation was, I was thinking about situations where I was a line cook in some country I didn't have no business being in, and
You was a sous chef in San Antonio.
Exactly, basically, like just crazy. Is that a quote from something? But crazy shit like that.
That was a deep cut, though. I wasn't expecting you to get that.
Okay,
one.
what is it? Well, because I want to know it for the future. Somebody else drops a reference.
That's Tropic Thunder. That's Robert Downey Jr.
Okay, got you. No, I haven't. But literally that kind of shit, where it's like, yeah, I've finagled my way into being like the sous chef at like some spot in like fucking goddamn Czech Republic, whatever the fuck, and I'm like. Yeah. In this situation where I'm like, nobody's speaking the same language as me. I'm in a kitchen, which up until that point, in movies, there's always that action scene where a motherfucker like fist fights through a kitchen. And up until you work in a kitchen, you've never seen what the inside of a commercial kitchen even looks like. So it's like, that's some back scene shit. And I'm like, yo, I'm here plating food. And it's just motherfuckers talking in a language that I know like half the words of. And that feels like, fuck, am I allowed to do this? It's not at the level of, the first class type shit, but that same kind of like, oh, fuck, like this is, and in your head, and I know you were born grown, so I don't know if you can relate to this bit, but it's like, in my head, I'm still that same person who was 15. So I'm like, damn, they really letting a nigga like me just be in the kitchen, just live life. I'm just on a plane, like giving tickets. I'm just, you know what I'm saying? I'm applying for an electric bill or buying, whatever. And it's a little bit surreal. But yeah, does that feel like anything when you were getting on those planes? No. Was there a sense of like there's a movie?
Definitely vibes with me.
Okay.
That definitely vibes with me.
Damn,
like
really,
I
I'm
definitely
living this life. Can you pick one that you think you have something to say about?
I don't know, man. I think that nigga was wrong for screaming about that baby.
I mean, yeah.
We are in a fucking tin can with a baby in a goddamn echo chamber, and you want to talk to me about being fucking okay?
Okay, because you're yelling.
So is the baby!
Okay, so you're a man.
Did that motherfucker pay extra to yell?
Okay.
No!
So,
shut up! Fuck you and shut up!
No.
You're disturbing me now. I don't give a fuck. You were sitting there watching that motherfucking baby cry for 45 fucking minutes. That shit didn't have nothing to do with nothing.
Okay.
Fuck lower that baby's voice.
Was that shit hilarious?
It was absolutely hilarious. Put the baby in cuffs. Fuck it.
That nigga was getting bar after bar after bar after bar on this baby. That shit was fucking hilarious. I laughed the entire time I watched the video. When they was like, sir, you're yelling. And he's like, so is the fucking baby. The baby's yelling right now. That nigga's quick, bro. You could tell he the uncle at the spades table that just like, don't let up. But
100%. But the fact that he was willing to go, because it's like he probably got kicked off that flight and banned from the airline.
Oh, yeah. Like, that nigga's never flying Southwest again.
Yeah. Like, that was insane. Because what the fuck is a baby supposed to do? Like, it's a fucking baby. But also, I'm like, man, they need to have a baby section or some shit. Or I don't know, something. The only reason it seems like acoustics could be put the baby in a box. Is that a thing?
Put the baby box in a box.
No, I know that sounds hold on. Is there, because you do that with dogs and cats and shit. The baby not gonna die. Like, why not put the baby inside a soundproof box? That's what they did in Bird Box. I mean, with air holes or whatever, but like, okay, I understand there's some design like hurdles that have to be gotten past, but
you could design or section off some stuff, like a baby section or whatever. Like, I completely understand that. My only thing, and
maybe compartments, like an overhead compartment for babies.
Like, if his timeline was accurate, and there is follow-up video that kind of showed like the aftermath, like when the police was called after they had to deplane everybody and all that kind of stuff, where somebody was like, his timeline wasn't accurate, and he said bullshit, because he was saying that the baby had been crying for 45 minutes straight. And then somebody turned to him and said it hadn't been 45 minutes, and he said bullshit. Bullshit. He was funny as fuck. Anyway, But if the baby's crying and they're not, and they're just like, in the air, not during takeoff, because takeoff, at different altitudes, ears popping, that can be very traumatizing for like a young baby.
For a child. Yeah. It hurts for me.
But if they're like in the air and that baby's been crying for 45 minutes, something's wrong, man. Like, can you like attend to that child's discomfort? That was like my own. That's the only bail I'm willing to shoot them. That's the only bail I'm willing to shoot.
Like it's already been.
Sometimes they do be crying.
It's already been changed.
Sometimes you have a colicky baby. Sometimes you have a colicky baby. They just cry. Understood. But a lot of times you don't.
Something's wrong.
Something's wrong. Please comfort your child. In the midst of you comforting your child, I'm not going to make any fuss about that. If your baby's crying for 45 minutes, I got my good headphones on the plane. I'm not even going to hear that shit, bro. Yeah. The only thing I'm hearing on this point is fucking Bad Baby because it's fucking cracking his music. So that's all I've been listening to. So
wait, did you mean to say Bad Bunny?
Yeah.
Okay, because Bad Baby she hit too, but that's might be a 40th slip you might have.
I never fucking heard. Yeah, but I mean,
got a couple of songs. Yeah. Okay.
Nah, man, it's cracking that nigga music, man. I don't know. I'm deep in his catalog tonight, and I have not found anything that wasn't a hit. But
I have not listened to much of his stuff, but I know he's worldwide like soccer. Like he's one of those.
You need to fucking listen to that shit, really? Bro, because he's worldwide for a reason. And I'm not just saying that because I've been drinking this bourbon for 2 hours. No, he's really just hitting on some other shit, man. He's on another level right now. But that is what I'm going to be hearing on the plane. I'm not going to hear your baby crying for 45 minutes. So to that end, I think he was kind of wilding. But that's the only bail I'm going to shoot.
Yeah, but if you can only afford them little double-pronged, airplane ear pods and you're trying to listen to the movie that's on the back of the fucking thing and somebody's just blaring crying baby, like that's going to fuck your whole flight up.
I'm be real, man. I had a phenomenal like movie watching experience and like couldn't even hear the movie one time on a plane. Like it was this lady sitting next.
What are you talking about?
It was just. I'm telling you, it was because it was just a good movie. And I'm gonna say what I'm gonna say. You can judge me however you want to judge me. But
that sounds like something I would say. Like what you just said sounds like an Eddyism. Like I had a phenomenal, wonderful cinematic experience. I didn't even see the movie. It was just the vibe was just immaculate.
It was. The vibes were great. I was sitting next to this couple and they were watching the Dora the Explorer movie. And I leaned over and I was like, "Oh shit, man, that's the Dora the Explorer movie." And they were like, "You're free to lean over and watch it." They had one pair of headphones and they put the subtitles on for me. And I was just reading the subtitles and I was like, "This is fucking phenomenal! Like this is cool." They had
this the hero's journey?
Offered me some, you know, like.
Did they try and take you home?
They did not. They did not.
Okay.
At least not that I noticed.
Okay, it might have been subtle because I don't know. I feel like if you got two headphones going like this, that's a
but the Dora the Explorer movie
hit
B+, A-.
That's pretty good. Now Spanish is the language of the future. I got to learn that shit because I feel like that's like you said, Bad Bunny, Dora the Explorer,
full Latino cast. They were doing representation the right way.
Unlike Lilo and Stitch. They got the whole internet fucked up. I think I saw somebody say they said, "Fuck it, we're gonna recast her. Like we're gonna redo it." I think I saw that they said that they bullied them on some Sonic shit. Like, okay, we're gonna get rid of this white woman and just we'll find a proper actress.
And also, like, she's like Filipino. The issue is that she's not native.
She's not even.
That's the issue.
Right. She's not even the right race, let alone the wrong right race.
Yeah, like that's the big issue. But also, have you seen like the mock-ups that have been floating around of what they have Stitch looking like?
Yo, those are all fake. Those are like those are obviously like those are all obviously so Mid-Journey images. They're not. Yeah, like people are just making viral tweet bullshit. But I think it's gonna be trash anyway. Like I low key like this doesn't seem like the kind of movie that works made live action. I'm trying to figure out how they're gonna do that. There's just so many
live action, by the way, because I hate when they say that shit. You know,
what you mean?
Live action, like Lion King or whatever. Like this half of this shit's gonna be green screen. You know what I'm saying? You know what I mean? Like
it's Lion King is animation, but like Nani, Lilo, all the Hawaiian humans, those are all going to be just like relatively modified actors. Yeah. So that's live action. So obviously
And then like also with like Lilo and Stitch, you could do a lot of shit like on site, but I'm thinking like Aladdin, right? Where like Will Smith was just like a completely fucking CGI figure.
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah.
The whole setting was a digital landscape, man. Like they're not going to be like.
That's still a live action film. If your primary, because live action is who are your protagonists? If your protagonists are made of meat, then that's a live action film, even if everything else is digitally created.
That's fair. That's fair. I just think that like they're cheating a little bit more than I would like them to cheat.
So what you want them to have, like animatronics, or you want them to shoot on site in Hawaii specifically?
I mean, I kind of don't want them to do it. I kind of think it's kind of pointless.
It
I get
does
why
seem like
they're
it's a bad
I get
idea.
why they're doing it. I get why they're doing it because Disney is amazing at monetizing this cash grab of nostalgia, right? So what you do is, Lilo and Stitch came out. I don't know. I would have been what, like 11, like 10, 11 or whatever. So now, they wait the appropriate amount of time where like I've now, people in my age range have had like children, maybe 2. Right. And so I'm going to go see it because I'm like, oh, this brings me back to my childhood. And then I'm going to buy 2 tickets for my kids, and I'm going to bring them
Introduce
into
them
it.
to the magical
and then
world
I'm
of-
going to introduce them to it while I'm also like enjoying it and like getting the nostalgia and like, and then the merchandising that's going to come from me living out my childhood dreams as well as them like finding something else that they like. So Disney's amazing at like monetizing that shit. But like, quite frankly, I would just be fine with animated remasters if they want to follow that strategy. Like I would just love like some cleaner animation stuff for like some of those like one-off projects that they didn't have the A-team on, because some of them still hold up fairly well. Like Lion King, they had the A-team on that shit, so like that hold up pretty well. But some of them didn't.
Redo? Like with a full
Atlantis
budget.
Atlantis.
Oh man, Atlantis was brilliant.
Also,
Atlantis was brilliant.
Not gonna lie.
Treasure Planet.
Also, Treasure Planet.
Is that what you was gonna say, or you gonna say something?
I was gonna say that.
Yeah.
But I was gonna say that, and then I was gonna extend it. For both of those, I actually wouldn't mind live action.
I think Atlantis live action could really fucking work. Treasure Planet
Atlantis
feels
live
like it would be
action
incredibly expensive.
It would be, but both of those could work on like some Pirates of the Caribbean style, like Disney live action kind of shit. Like they could be huge.
Guillermo del Toro's like Atlantis, I feel like that shit could hit. Like some cool ancient technology, like a little adventure going into the Amazon, like that shit could fucking hit easily.
And you picked the appropriate like filmmaker to do that shit too. That was pretty good.
He would, yeah. I think
he would destroy that shit.
But Lilo and Stitch this shit finna be trash because but the little girl, she looks racially correct, so that's cool. But I think it's gonna be trash. Well, anyway, I think we can close it out there since we've given the folks some nice cinematic advice. Look, if you see the caretakers in your life sort of neglecting your childhood to where you don't have that level of like freedom and carefreeness in your childhood, you might be seeing a red flag. But at the same time, if you're a podcast host who wants to dive headfirst into an active goddamn investigation with limited fucking resources, potentially putting out the wrong narrative, you know what I'm saying, and your co-host calls you on it, you might be the one that's waving the red flag. It happens sometimes. You know what I'm saying? It's been Waving the Red Flag podcast. It's been Eddie. It's been AB. Josh will be back next week. Join us on Patreon if you want all the bonus episodes. If you want to see like the conversation that we had before the podcast. If you want to talk to us live. If you want access to the Discord, hop on there. That's The Real Podcast. And subscribe to this. Turn on the bell so you see when we have a new episode. And we'll see y'all next week. Anything that people need to know, Alvin? About you, about the world, about the stocks, about the games, about Bad Bunny? No?
Nope.
Peace, everybody. We'll see y'all next week.
It's a red flag.